But the sad, obvious truth is that the days of manageable war have nearly come to an end. In the minds of the world's great leaders, those billions of dollars haven't merely been spent, they've been wasted. Because here we are, after more than a decade of constant warfare, with no clear end, and no clear winner in sight. So really, at this point, what other option do these superpowers have, if not the nuclear one? And therein, of course, lies the rub. For when China or the United States launches its nuclear missiles and drops its atomic bombs, there will be no one left to count the casualties, let alone the ordnance. No one left to declare victory. When the political tension between the tribal superpowers of planet Earth reached the point of no return, even the petrifying prospect of mutually assured destruction couldn't de-escalate it. Human nature, much like war, never changes, and from the moment sapient humans came into being, their fate was solidified. So long as humanity remained tribal, humanity also remained doomed. The world plummeted into the deep darkness of a nuclear holocaust. 84 years later, when the water chip in California's Vault 13 broke, the Vault Dweller braved the radiated wasteland in search of a replacement. Through their eyes and the eyes of the Chosen One, we saw what became of the West Coast. As for the East Coast, it would be some time before we learned of the devastation done there. 200 years after the Great War, in the year 2277, the lone wanderer left Vault 101 in search of his father and the waters of life. For some of us, this was our first time exploring the world of Fallout. For others, it was the first time exploring the East Coast. Either way, the scale of the annihilation done to Washington DC is astounding, and for most wanderers, the first true sign of civilization can be found to the southeast, in the form of a fortified settlement jutting from the ruined countryside like a giant rusted metal golem. Could this town be a sign of hope for humanity? Hey guys, it's Drew here and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. If you saw my video on the Great Khans, you'll know I've decided to revisit some of the most iconic factions, locations and stories from the history of Fallout. It's FudgeMuppet's way of showing appreciation to a franchise we adore, one that's not in the best place of late. Before nukes were dropped for the lols, and the wasteland wanderers ignored the restoration of civilization in favour of emoting and taking selfies, the atmosphere in post-war America was solemn, and the seldom seen glimmers of hope were poignant, for the destructive nature of humanity was only trumped by their tenacity, and their will to survive in even the most despairing of circumstances. We'll always favour the lore featured in New Vegas in the first two entries into the series, but Fallout 3 had some gems too, especially atmospheric ones. The settlement of Megaton is a great example, and when we explore the town we'll soon see a perverse cult operating from within, one which seems to fetishise the very horrors that brought society to its knees in the first place. All of this will be explored in this video. Constructed primarily from the scraps of old pre-war aircrafts, the high walls of Megaton conceal and protect the community within. Beyond the metallic gates, Megaton's narrow pathways gradually descend inwards, flanked on all sides by ramshackle sheet metal buildings. On first glance, it seems as though a particularly robust breeze could rip these rickety shacks from their foundations, showering the inhabitants of Megaton in rusted iron. Like an architectural porcupine, brushing against any of the town's edifices will certainly leave you scraped or pricked. Living here without an up-to-date tetanus vaccination would arguably be more hazardous than the mutant-riddled wasteland itself. A significant piece of information for any prospective settlers in Megaton would have to be the circumstances of this town's construction. The settlement is quite clearly built on a crash site. That would explain the gaping crater in the earth, as well as the abundance of airplane scraps. But what's more pressing is the type of aircraft this was. Megaton was not built from the remains of a crashed commercial airliner. No, Megaton was built from the remains of a bomber aircraft, an aircraft carrying a live atomic bomb. Miraculously, even after its rather turbulent flight path and dubious landing, the bomb did not detonate, and the Megaton-class atomic bomb became the namesake for the town. The wasteland survivors credited with establishing the settlement originally found the crater after failing to secure entry into Vault 101. The names of these survivors aren't known. However, Manya Vargas, a settler in the year 2277, says that her grandfather was among them. When they found that the vault door would not open for them, they sought shelter from the ravaging dust storms. The crater seemed to be the most suitable location. Could you imagine? Your best bet for survival came from taking shelter within touching distance of a nuclear weapon that could wipe whole cities off the face of the planet. Once the elements began to settle, some of the sheltering wastelanders wandered DC again, while the rest chose to remain. Knowing that this crater would be populated, many of the wanderers made it a habit to return to the site for trading purposes. Soon later, this deadly landmark became a bartering hub. Unfortunately, nothing good can ever come to fruition in the wasteland without some folks trying to kill you for it. And as the town began to grow, so too did the danger of invading raider and super mutant parties. Manya Vargas's father had become rich on the caravan routes, and with affluence comes influence. He convinced the other settlers of the town to salvage materials from the destroyed aircraft and other aircrafts found at the Washington DC airport to build their homes within the crater. You'd think that at some point these settlers would have made some attempt to relocate that giant live bomb from their new home, but among the settlers were some members of the newly established Church of the Children of Atom. It's unclear whether these members had always had a perverse reverence for nuclear arms, or whether their proximity to this megaton bomb had initiated their worship of it. But I think it's safe to assume the latter. It seems to be some form of Stockholm syndrome, some means of reconciling the constant fear of a grisly death caused by the bomb's presence. Either way, the Children of Atom offered to aid the other megaton settlers, so long as the bomb remained untouched. And that explains why, as of the year 2277, the megaton bomb remains the centerpiece of the town called Megaton. I'm sure the more sane inhabitants were willing to acquiesce with the Children of Atom's request, largely due to a fear of activating the bomb when moving it. If it remains undetonated for this long, why tamper with it? There's plenty more to say about this religious cult, but I'll hold off for now, as there's a little more history to explore. In the year 2241, Megaton was stable and thriving, boasting one of the largest settlement populations in the DC wasteland. In this same year, an expeditionary party from Vault 101 made contact with Megaton. Also in this year, a raiding party attacked the fortified town. Among the fatalities was Colin Moriarty's father, leaving the 14-year-old Colin to inherit his father's establishment, Moriarty's Saloon. By the year 2277, a significant chunk of Megaton's settlers had originated from elsewhere, and only Manya Vargas could trace her lineage back to the town's founders. Lucas Sims, the sheriff of Megaton, proved to be an invaluable member of Megaton's society, and under his leadership, attacks by raider gangs went from frequent occurrences to a very bad idea. The Raiders of Springvale, for example, after their leader Boppo was shot in the head by Sims, recognised the folly in raiding the formidable city. The fate of Megaton after the year 2277 hangs in the balance, and depending on the actions of the lone wanderer, the crater town could be annihilated into an even bigger crater, or it could become a household name across the country, known for its trading, as well as being the source of Moira Brown's Wasteland Survival Guide. Will the lone wanderer be tantalised by the base urge to see the undetonated bomb detonate? Or will they show restraint, breaking the destructive cycle that sent the world back to the Dark Ages in the first place? Lucas Sims offers the lone wanderer between 100 and 500 caps to disarm the bomb, while the eccentric entrepreneur, Alistair Tenpenny, offers the lucrative reward of between 500 and 1,000 caps, as well as a penthouse suite in Tenpenny Tower. This decision brings out the destructive nature of man, and we can see firsthand through Mr. Burke and Mr. Tenpenny the kind of attitude that led to the Great War. Tenpenny is a rich recluse, keeping to himself at the top of his tower, observing the wasteland with a sniper in hand from his balcony. From here he merrily shoots at targets in his personal wasteland safari, and he perceives Megaton as an eyesore. To him it is an insult, and he would see dozens die if it means ridding him of the ugly sight. If the wanderer humours the Old English coot, Tenpenny will irreverently say, "Well done, Mr. Burke, what a grand display of fireworks. I almost wish there was another nuke we could detonate." You don't see that very often. In this quest we see the human responses to weapons of mass destruction. In Mr. Tenpenny we find a man who sees a bomb and wants nothing more than to see it detonate. To him, survival is about utterly destroying your adversaries. And in Lucas Sims, we find a man tired of devastation, and tired of the savagery which proliferates in the wake of total atomic annihilation. You'd think that, in the case of nuclear armaments, the issue is black and white. An evil man would want to see it detonate, a good man would want to see it disarmed. But in the Church of the Children of the Atom, we see an entirely different phenomenon. To this cult, the atom bomb is more than a weapon. It is a force too powerful for humans humans, and where there is power, there is veneration. While we can't trace the beginnings of this church back to an exact time or place, the Children of Atom present when Megaton was constructed seems to be the earliest mention of the religion. By the year 2287, over 40 years after their first appearance, the church grew in popularity significantly and had reached as far as the Boston Commonwealth, and an island just off the coast of northern Maine. In the Commonwealth, as well as in DC, we see the more passive followers of this peculiar church. But on the remote irradiated island, the Children of Atom within the nucleus are considerably more fanatical. Come forth and drink the waters of the glow, for this ancient weapon of war is our salvation. It is the very symbol of Atom's glory. Behold, he's coming with the clouds, and every eye shall be blind with his glory. Every ear shall be stricken deaf to hear the thunder of his voice. Give your bodies to Atom, my friends. Release yourself to his power. Feel his glow and be divided. Confessor Cromwell, the head of the church, preaches his sermon with his bare legs submerged in the noxious green waters surrounding the Megaton bomb. To him, the radiation is a divine gift, and if he's fortunate, he may give birth to 1 billion stars, formed from the mass of his wretched and filthy body. For the record, these words are coming from the less fanatical preacher. The Church of the Children of Atom believe the War of 2077 was actually a great holy event perpetuated by their god, Atom. The fundamental belief of the Children of Atom is that every single atom in existence contains within it an entire universe of its own, and when an atom is split, many universes are created. What's convenient about this theory is that through this lens, the Great War was not destructive. No, it was a glorious and unifying holy event, in which an unfathomable amount of new life was created. To the Church, death is not something to be mourned. Instead, it should be celebrated, for in dying the faithful will be reunited with the god Atom via the glow. The glow is the earthly embodiment of Atom, as seen through the sickly radioactive fog that hangs over the island, and in every irradiated zone and water source. Radiation sickness is therefore somewhat of a paradox to the Children of Atom, because if you die of exposure to radiation, you're not suffering, you're simply ready to be unified with the Holy Spirit Atom. The ghouls are an interesting specimen to members of the church, for they have simultaneously been exposed to huge amounts of radiation, yet remain alive and immune to the effects of Atom's power. Of course, this isn't damning evidence of the church's misguided and rather batshit crazy ideology. No, they have an explanation. The ghouls are referred to as Atom's Forsaken, and they must have unfinished business keeping them chained in the shackles of life. In denying the ghouls their unification with Atom himself, Atom touches them with the glow, and asks that they spread the word of Atom to those around the world. And what about the feral ghouls? Wouldn't their existence debunk the church's claims? Well no, because they obviously refuse to accept the gift of the glow, and in refusing to spread the word of Atom, they are doomed to wander the wastelands eternally. In the capital wasteland, the extent of the church's assertiveness ends at preaching, and perhaps the occasional strong-worded reprimand to non-believers. As for the Commonwealth variety, they are known for attempting some more aggressive conversion tactics. One such tactic involves spraying the individual with lethal amounts of radiation. In the Commonwealth's crater of Atom, some more mellow members can be found, and while their belief system seems a tad loony, these settlers appear to be inexplicably immune to the face-melting levels of radiation present. In fact, talking to Mother Isolde will gradually reduce the recipient's level of radiation. The sect of the church present on the island, led by a high confessor Tectus, attribute their hostile nature to the fact that the island is Atom's holy land, and all its inhabitants must worship Atom's glory. As a former understudy to Confessor Cromwell, Tectus preaches the same ideals, with such lines as, "Locked inside all of us are billions of invisible worlds, waiting only to be touched by his glow in order to be born anew through division. If the sole survivor is persuasive enough, Tectus can be convinced to remain inside the nucleus with all of his followers, while the survivor launched the vessel's nuclear missiles. If done successfully, the cult can be completely wiped out, obliterated from the island with the High Confessor's own consent, thus allowing the children to reach division." The presence of Megaton, a safe haven accommodating a devastating nuclear weapon, and the presence of the Church of the Children of Atom serves as a fitting metaphor for the human tendency to revere the very thing they fear most. A couple of famous quotes from Bertrand Russell come to my mind when talking about the Children of Atom. Firstly, "Most people would sooner die than think." which is conveniently at the very core of the children's belief system. And secondly, religion is based primarily upon fear. This quote isn't even necessarily a criticism of religion, and it makes total sense to me why a cult like the Church of the Children of Atom would come into being in the first place. The overarching theme of the Fallout series is that, when the bombs fell, they destroyed not only the landscape, but also all of humanity's progress in the pursuit of enlightenment. Those who survived the apocalypse were thrust back into the days of isolated tribes warring for resources. Tribes who care about strength over compassion. Compassion became the death sentence in the New World climate. And with science and technology being luxuries hoarded by factions like the Brotherhood of Steel, most people lived in overwhelming fear again. And when everything feels hopeless, you turn to romantic solutions. Solutions like those posed by the Children of Atom. Nuclear war was a gift. And when the radiation burns you alive, flaying your skin and scorching the hair from your head, it may bring you some peace of mind to learn that this is your ticket to unification with the almighty God named Atom. And there you have it, guys, the city of Megaton and the curious cult which spawned from within its walls. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more Fallout lore on the channel, your likes and comments go a long way. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Drew, and I'll see you in the next one.